Hello everyone, I'm George from Ireland. Welcome back to my channel. The news is out today that Annaliese Dodds, oh God, I realize I misspelt that. It's an E in the middle, not an A. She has tendered a resignation over cuts to the international aid budget. So she sent a letter to the Prime Minister, as is custom in these situations. Since Tony Blair's day, they've addressed each other by Christian names. In the old days, it was by titles. Um, Anyway, she said it would remove food and healthcare from desperate people, deeply harming the United Kingdom's reputation, and said that it was with great sadness that she was tendering her resignation. So she's only been in the cabinet, obviously, since July. That's just a few months, and she is the International Development Minister. Now, Anna Lee Dodds had the inestimable pleasure of knowing me many years ago in Oxford. So she's convivial, she's serious-minded, she's a conviction politician. She's gone along with some policies which she must find nauseating, and I've got to hand it to her. She is decent in as much as she's resigned on principle. And the other cabinet ministers, I'm sure they dislike this decision, but because they're thinking their careers, they want the red boxes, they want the titles, they want the fat salaries, they want a chance at the top job because they sense Starmer's not going to be there for that much longer, another 4 years or so, and to give them the best chance of getting the prime ministership, they should stay in the cabinet. Because if you resign from the cabinet, there's no guarantee you ever get reappointed by Starmer or any other minister. And others might say, okay, we dislike this policy, we disagree with it, but in the round, we do agree with the government's mission, and you have to take the good with the bad. It's exigent to do this. I actually agree with the government's policy. And I know people often pan overseas aid, so it is giving gender awareness courses in this country. A lot of money is filched by corrupt officials and politicians and blah, blah, blah. And some of these countries, they don't need it. They're splurging so much on arms that they really need it. They shouldn't be. They should be doing this for themselves. And much of that is true. But you have got to see some people who are in real poverty, not the so-called poverty people have in the United Kingdom, where like nobody is starving and probably nobody is hungry. Some adults on 2 meals a day. That's good for us, actually. Adults, most of us should eat only 2 meals a day. I know I'm the worst offender, but I realise that people, including children who otherwise are malnourished, are going without healthcare, and this is a lifeline to them. But one has to remember the duty of the United Kingdom is to the people of the United Kingdom and nobody else. And though much of this work is morally worthy, that's not what British people pay their taxes for. If you want to donate to charity, that's a very noble thing to do. And I almost never give anything to charity. But the government is not a charity, and we shouldn't think it is. And charities are not governments. And charities start behaving like governments in their arrogance and presuming to tell governments what to do, and so on. So many charities are five-star charities who are more interested in their executives having six-figure salaries, staying in five-star hotels and paying business class. But despite all that waste, some of it gets through and it does do some real good. But the United Kingdom urgently needs to beef up its defences. You see that Putin is on the march. The UK has cut and cut and cut for decades, even during the Cold War. You know, end of the Second World War, the British Army is like 5 million strong. Now, obviously, the cuts were very sensible. It's now about 70,000 strong. You know, the population's increased, and I realise that the troop numbers aren't everything. I've never been a soldier. It's also the equipment. But the United Kingdom urgently needs just more equipment and then more modern equipment. The assets, about 500 horses is ridiculous. Now, I like show horses as much as anybody else, but the US Army is about 5 times the size of the British Army. It's got fewer horses, but far more tanks. But I mean, apparently, a horse is very cheap to buy and run compared to a tank. So, you know, it's about 100 horses for the cost of one tank. But nevertheless, should do it. I might slim down the equine units of the British Army to about 100 horses, enough to have a nice canter around Buckingham Palace and spend the rest on things that are actually going to be used for fighting, because the army is not just there for decorative purposes. So that's it. So they had this cabinet meeting. She has resigned. So there's about 90 grand. There's a salary as an MP, about a further 60 grand as a cabinet minister. It varies slightly according to which one. So there was the United Kingdom was giving, was it 5% of gross national income to aid, and Cameron had increased it. The Reform Party has said it should be cut altogether. It's now going to go down to 0.3% of aid, and the balance will be used to beef up defence. So anyway, there seems to be no rancor in the resignation, and the Prime Minister, he has commended Ms Dodds for her hard work, deep commitment, and friendship. Now, Annaliese Dodds, she lives with her long-term boyfriend, is also a Labour activist. They got 2 children. She represents East Oxford, which is a more working class area of Oxford, has been a Labour seat since I think it's 1987. And was a real safe Labour seat. The Greens got a significant presence there. But when Andrew Smith was their MP in about 2005, I think that's when the Liberal Democrats launched a major campaign after the Iraq War. But Labour held it, and it's a real Labour stronghold at the moment. But the far left has a presence there, especially in the shape of the Green Party. Remember Annaliese Dodds talking about how she got into politics. As a schoolgirl in Aberdeen, having a part-time job in a chip shop, there wasn't even a minimum wage. And she was very bright. She realized she could easily get a very well-paid job after university. Indeed, she did. Went to read philosophy, politics, and economics at Balliol, and then a master's degree, a doctorate somewhere. Was an academic, member of the European Parliament. But there's some people who were not very brainy, and they were going to be stuck doing that job for life. And without a minimum wage, their lives were going to be very tough indeed. And that's what attracted her to the Labour Party. Remember, the Conservative and Unionist Party in the 90s was opposed to a minimum wage. So she said that poverty reduction is what comes to her. And I don't think this is really damaging the UK's reputation. The United Kingdom proportionally gives more aid than almost any other country. There are a few like sort of Sweden, Norway, it's even higher. And the thing is, how? I mean, what are these other countries in their gratitude do for the UK? Nothing. They're not automatically agreeing to the United Kingdom in terms of international affairs. And people say there's got to be no conditionality. You give aid to those who need it most, regardless of their governmental policies. So they're hostile or they're friendly. It doesn't matter. You still need to save the vulnerable. And what does count, what really does matter, is raw power. And do you think Putin worries about international aid? I mean, I don't want to be in the same bracket as him, but these tyrants, they don't mess around with frills like that. I mean, they occasionally give something just for show, but really they think it's guns that count, not butter, especially if you're giving it to the needy. So she's sad about that. So I think the Labour government has made the right decision, partly because Sir Keir Starmer went to Washington DC to have a meeting with President Trump and said how the United Kingdom's is going to increase its defence spending to 2.5% of gross domestic product and eventually 3% of gross domestic product. And the only way to do that was by cutting over £6 billion per annum on this aid. So some people have said it's shameful, like what's her name, Diane Abbott. Diane Abbott, you earn a salary of over £90,000. You make a lot of money for speeches and so on. How much of your money do you give to aid? I don't know. She's never one to hide a light under a bushel. She's completely hypocritical. The woman who's totally against independent education, even selection education. But when it came to her own child, she put him into a fee-paying school. Just staggering, sickening hypocrisy. Socialism doesn't work even for the socialists. Why should it work for anybody else? So that is Annaliese Dodds. There should be on the backbench, is probably a critical friend of the government, a bit like Peter Kilfoyle when he resigned as a junior defence minister under Tony Blair. It's possible she'll come back into cabinet later on, maybe if Labour wins a second election. Thank you for watching my channel. Make sure you subscribe on Patreon. Donate to PayPal, georgecallahan798gmail.com. Toodaloo.